What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
Hey, welcome back to our podcast. We have been starting a new topic, conduct, and we are going to continue on that subject. Yeah. That's all I have to say.
To kick us off, we've got our fun facts today. So our fun fact is that boys and girls, males and females, when they are children, we develop our brains differently. So girls tend to develop the right side of our brain first. So we get more vocabulary, we start talking first, we start reading first, we have better memory as we're kids. There's no guarantee that stays as we get older. Mm-hmm. And then boys tend to develop the left side of their brain first. So that's like the logical, the problem solving. They tend to learn math skills better, and like their coordination is a lot better. So that's usually why you see boys playing like catch and stuff first before you'll see a girl do that. So that was interesting. Just naturally, girls tend to just talk more and and read more, and the boys tend to like problem solve and be real logical and figure stuff out. They'll do puzzles and stuff easier than girls can. So I thought that was interesting. So that's our fun fact for today.
Makes you unique to who you are. So, okay, so the way we're going to move forward with this is we're going to look at ratings. And we're going to look at like TV ratings and movie ratings. We're looking at it as because it's something that most people are familiar with, like the ratings, how they came about and what they each mean. So we're going to go through the list and most of you probably know what they are, but maybe some of you don't know what they are. So we're going to go through them anyways. And then one other thing too is it's not the standard, but it's a standard that people are familiar with. And we felt like it'd be good for you guys to have something, because we're going to be referencing back to it. You know, are you G in your speech, rated G in your speech, or are you kind of how would you rate yourself in the things that we're going to be talking about? And so we wanted something that was familiar.
You mean like in our conduct?
Yeah.
Like how would you rate your conduct?
But yeah, how would you rate your conduct as we move forward? But just knowing as well that it's not the standard that we're living by. It's just something to help you kind of gauge and rate yourself. And I think it'd be an easy way because you guys are familiar with that. Most people are. So I think I'm gonna let Elisa kind of start us off with a little bit of history on how the ratings came about, and then I'll go through and kind of explain what each rating means. Okay?
Alrighty then. Okay, so the ratings that we know today, like PG, G-rated, PG-13 and all that, that was first, I guess it first came around in 1968, because before that rating, there was something called the Hays Code. Because when you think about it, before, when movies first started, it was just pictures, like moving, there was like no sound really, and there was nobody talking. It was black and white, it was pretty
silent movies.
Yeah, it was silent movies. So there, there's not much to rate on, I guess. So back then, it was just called a Hays Code, and it was just like censorship. Oh my goodness, censorship. There you go. And it was just more about like the moral of the movie, and that was the only reference you really had. So, but which made sense because there was not much to go off of. It was just silent movies and people moving around. But then in 1968, they introduced this rating that we know today, mostly I think for parents, because and also for like a freedom of speech kind of, so that like the government can't ban what an industry can make. But you don't want to be blindsided as a parent, or even just as an audience, of you think you're watching this type of movie and then you go in and you're like, oh my goodness, this is not what I expected. So that's why they implemented that rating. So the ratings, when it first came around, it was G-rated, general audience, M-rated, mature audience, and then after that, I think it was R-rated, which is like restricted age of who's allowed to watch that. Yeah. But then they changed the M to the PG because mature audience can be pretty like broad. Yeah. And some people mistaked it for like, you know, mature movies. So
and then some kids think, well, I'm mature.
Yeah. Yeah. So they changed it to PG, which is what we know today, parental guidance. Yeah. And then yeah, I don't know where else.
I think that was it. And then why did they start again? What movie was it that they started to change?
Oh, it was Jaws. Jaws. Yeah. So they made PG-13 because it wasn't PG, because it's, you know, there's if you've seen Jaws, there's a lot of like
violence
and blood. Yeah. You know? But it's also not rated R because it's not super like crazy. Yeah. So they made PG-13 as like an in between. And then just for me and for my reference point, like the difference between PG and PG-13, like now is the difference between Ice Age and Jaws. That like keeps it clear in my head. I'm like, okay, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between Ice Age and Jaws. Yeah. The things that are allowed in there. Yeah. So, but Jaws is the reason why there's an in between PG and rated R.
Yeah. And then I will say, in order to figure out a rating of any type, the elements are typically like language, drug use, violence, and mature activity. And so, but those were the major elements of when we take in consideration of what are you rated. You got to take in consideration your language, the drug use, the violence, and the other stuff.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna read the list of what each of them means, and then kind of give a brief definition. And I'm gonna do the movie one first, and then there's also one for like TV, I guess. So I wanted to do that one too, because I'm pretty sure we did that previously. Well, not in any of the episodes, but when we were talking about it. So I'm gonna go through the first one. So the first one is general audiences, and this is designed to be appropriate for all ages. This film rating indicates a film contains nothing that would offend parents for viewing by children. Okay, and then the PG is parental guidance suggested. Okay, parents are urged, okay, to give parental guidance. This film may contain some material parents might not like for their young children. Okay, so it's parental guidance suggested. PG-13 is parents strongly cautioned. Okay, and it says some material may not be suited for children under 13, may contain violence and bad stuff, no, and language, adult activities, or other elements beyond a PG rating, but it doesn't reach the restricted category. Sorry. And then the next one is the rated R one. It says this rating is specifically designed to be viewed by adults and therefore, may be unsuitable for children under 17. And then there's another rating that we don't want to talk about because it's not worth the time. But if you notice, most of these, I would say probably obviously the first three required parental guidance. Okay, I feel like that's really important, is because apparently parents cared what their kids watched, or parents should be involved in what your kids are watching, you know, because each of them contains like something for the parents. And then I wanted to look really quick at the one for I guess there's one for TV. And TVY, it says, is for all children. And it says it's intended for children 2 to 6 and is not designed or expected to frighten. Okay, so that means that 2 to 6 year olds probably are really sensitive. You know, so you can, you know, they probably don't, yeah. So, yeah, and then the TV Y7 is directed to older children, and it says it's intended for children 7 and older, best suited for children who know the difference between real life and make-believe, and contains mild fantasy or comedic violence. Some content could frighten younger children under age 7. Okay, so that's Y7. And then the Y7FV, directed to older children, fantasy violence. Intended for older children, contains fantasy violence more combative than TV Y7 programs. And then the G is the general audience, intended for all ages, contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no bad dialogue or situations. The PG-13 again is, or the PG is the parental guidance suggested. Same thing, intended for younger children in the company of an adult, possibly contains some suggestive dialogue, infrequent coarse language, some inappropriate situations, and some moderate violence. And then the TV 14 is strongly cautioned. And this is your TV, you guys, okay? Intended for children ages 14 and older in the company of an adult, possibly contains intensely suggestive dialogue, strong coarse language, intense inappropriate situations, or intense violence. And then the last one, it says, is for mature audiences. It says intended for adults and may be unsuitable for children under 17, possibly contains crude, indecent language, or inappropriate activity or graphic violence. So just to give you an idea, like what we're supposed to be kind of monitoring that in our children. So I don't know how many people actually even know or even bother to check any of those things in when they're watching movies or when they're watching. So we wanted to use that as a base because, like I said, moving forward, we're going to use it. And we wanted you guys to kind of have a definition of what all these things, because if there's a reason they rate these. And it's basically so that okay, they're crossing this line on this one. They're crossing this line on this one. They're pushing the boundary on this one, in this area, in this area,
Well, honestly, I think like we're watching TV. Well, when we watch TV, you don't even see like the ratings. Mm-hmm. You might see it in the very, very, very beginning for like a split second. But if you don't know what they mean, because I didn't know like there was all of that. The only things I ever remember seeing is like TV 14 and like MA, mature audience, and the 14 one. But even that, like I don't know what that means. I just assume, well, okay, if you're 14 or older. I don't know what goes into that, mature audience. I'm like, all right, it's gonna have more stuff in it. But like as a kid, you're not thinking about that. And I think it's the same thing, like you said, since we're gonna be using this like for our conduct, for rating. You don't think about that for yourself. Like you don't think about that at all. This is my behavior is not appropriate for the 7-year-old who is watching me. Like we're not. I know I never thought that. I didn't, like as a teenager, I didn't give a flip who was watching me and what I was doing. I was thinking about me.
Or how it affected them around, because there's always someone younger watching, no matter how old you are. Even like a 2-year-old, there's always gonna be someone younger, sibling, whatever. So
watching, or a parent with a child, or teenagers, or with your peers even. And it's just like you might feel like uncomfortable if somebody says something, but you don't even, just even considering that's one thing that I noticed just looking back at this, is that a lot of it requires that guidance from a parent. You're cautioned or you're strongly suggested or it's telling you understand. But yet how many kids expose themselves to all that stuff, not even thinking, like you said, even in your conduct, you don't think, how does what I do affect somebody else? But apparently it does. Yeah,
like I had to think about like when I first had my son, me and my husband had to think about like the way we talk to each other, saying things like, like shut up, and things like that. Like I had to think, I don't want my 2-year-old going around telling other people to shut up, and like using the insults that me and my husband use with each other. It's funny for us because we're adults, and it's not as harsh because we know we don't mean it when we say it to each other, but kids don't understand that yet. Like you said, there's that one that says the difference between fantasy and reality. Kids don't understand that, so they're gonna go around, they're gonna say whatever it is you're saying, and we had to think, if I don't want my kid to repeat what I say, then I shouldn't be saying it anymore. So that was like a big, I think that's like a big for most parents. It's a big like, dang, I gotta check my conduct, And then going back to those ratings, you have to realize that when they're as small as they are, like my son's 2, that for the most part, me and my husband, when we're around my son, anyways, we gotta be G-rated, because he's gonna be 2 and he's gonna copy whatever we do. You tell him to go hit somebody, he's gonna go hit him because he doesn't understand.
They're sponges, like they just absorb, and then they go into that phase where like, they become like a parrot.
Yeah, they copy everything. Even my daughter, I don't know if it was like my other kids were saying like they hate something, and nothing like not somebody, but my daughter started going into saying when her brothers would upset her sister, well, I hate you. And I'm like, no. So I explained to her like what hate means and that it's not okay. And I mean, the kids had to have a talk of like, we can't say that anymore because she's going around telling other people stuff, if she doesn't like something, that she hates them. And she doesn't even understand that. It's
And I think it's important, like just like what you said, you don't realize that your conduct is reflecting something about you. I mean, the reason I'm sure they did a study, when they did all these ratings, like, the sensitivity levels of kids and what they take in, or what they, like if they have a hard time separating, certain things, like you said, reality from fantasy, what's real, what's not, and so you have to be careful with that. But so, and even like I said, as teenagers or young adults, I don't think we think about that, like, at all. Like, how are you conducting yourself? How would you rate yourself in your speech? Or how would you rate yourself in your, like, what nobody sees, like, in your thought life? What's going on? Is it G-rated, or PG-13, or, like, or what you're saying, or how you're behaving around your coworkers, or even, like you said, your husband. Like, even how do you interact with him, when you're, like, in an argument, does it stay, PG? Or is there some coarse language in there?
Some rated R words coming out when you're arguing.
Some suggestive dialogue.
Well, I think even PG, when I looked at stuff, it's like crude humor too. I think that crude. I don't know how else you'd explain that.
It's like technically adult jokes that kids don't get.
So that's kind of like what it is. What's in PG of what I've seen that has popped up is like crude humor. Some mild crude humor.
And I don't even know if these even, like,
how strongly people
actually stick to them, like, with the movies. I don't know if, is PG really PG, or is it really PG-13, or is it like how close do they get?
I know there's like a specific number I know to be considered like rated R, or to technically still be considered PG-13 and not R. There's a certain number of like curse words that you can technically still use, that are technically rated R, but because you only used it once, or you only used it twice, then technically you don't have to be. So like there's even that in your own conduct where you're not technically breaking the rules. And as kids, I remember as a teenager, we loved to technically not break the rule. We love to get to that line, but not go over it. We'll stand on it, but we won't go over it.
My kids will use words in other places, but really like, and I'm like, don't ever say that again, because I know you're saying, like the Christmas movie.
You're pretending not to say a curse.
They're like,
curse
but
word.
you're saying it, so you're at that line. Ready to cross it. So if you're doing that in front of me, what's your conduct like in front of your friends when? Because of course you're not gonna say in front of me, but in front of your friends or in front of who you're around. Like, what is that conduct? Like, where do you draw the line? Because you're really close to it. In front of me,
Yeah. And I think it's like if movies have a standard, and TV has a standard, and even the games, what is it, the games have
like rated E for everyone.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that, there's a reason that they have those, not that they, like I said, live by those, but I have to say that this is this, I have to say that this is this, and I have to. And I think for yourself, it's the same thing. Okay, where do you stand on this? Or how do you, and I think that's always important moving forward. This is not the standard, but it's a way for you to kind of measure where you're at.
Yeah, because just thinking, you could just think like right now, like just sitting by yourself, technically, like what would you, like if you were a movie, what kind of rating would you get?
Like silent movie.
The silent movie? I'm not rated at all. you know. But like just like thinking about it, because like we all, like I think we said in our first episode that we have different conduct for different situations and different people. You know, there's your school conduct if you're still in school, there's your home conduct, your friend conduct, your authority conduct, you know, when you're in trouble with teachers or with your parents. You know, there's your parent conduct when it's just you and your parents. You know, I'm sure you act different. So it's just like thinking, how would I rate myself? You know, like thinking as a teenager, my gosh,
You're all over the place.
you're all over the place. Like,
Well, even with like your conduct of I have a hard time with this word, conduct. Like even with just like when you're like trying to get attention, in a sense, when you like to be center of attention, you conduct yourself in a different way. And
or
it's
when
like,
you're trying to get somebody's attention.
yeah.
Yeah. And then even thinking about what makes, I know it's just kind of weird, but when you think about what's the best movie, like in your eyes, you know what I mean? Like when you look at a movie, what do you walk away with sometimes? What makes it good to you, or what makes it, you know what I mean?
Like worth watching.
Yeah, worth watching.
What makes
or-
you like it? Kind of.
Yeah.
And if it's because there's a bunch of like cuss words, then maybe there's some
Yeah.
self-reflection.
Because, you know, it's true, you know, like what makes it interesting, you know, sometimes, you know, you might watch something and think, you know, they really didn't have to do all that, you know, because you kind of ruin it, you know, and
like,
sometimes, yeah.
What is the purpose?
Yeah,
What's
like,
being
what's
in
the
here?
message, you
Yeah.
know, what's the message, you know, why is all this, you know, because so many now, you know, these rated R movies, like, so yeah, I think it's the same with us.
Yeah, no, and I think it makes you think. It makes you think about yourself, because it makes me think about like the things that I allow myself to do, you know, and even like the things that like even from our very first season talking about like boundaries, you know, like the things that I don't allow into my life because I know it's going to affect my conduct.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain books, there are certain movies that I'm like I can't watch that because it's gonna get in my head too much, and then it changes my perspective. The more I watch it or the more I listen to it, the more I read it. So like just understanding that like your conduct isn't just what people see, it's also like for yourself. You know, there are ratings for yourself, for your brain. You know, what kind of thoughts are running around in your head, the things that nobody sees. you know.
Yeah, and then conducting yourself, like we said, with other people. Like, how are you doing that, you know? Or why? Oh, I guess we'll talk about that later.
We'll get
Yeah,
more into it.
we'll get more into it, you know.
No worries. We'll dive deep.
We'll dive deeper into it. But yeah, so we just wanted to lay kind of a foundation going forward. You know, when we talk about, like, if we say something's rated R, you know what we're talking about. Or PG or whatever. Because I think it's important for you to kind of know where you're at in your life. And that those things do make a difference, you know. You are showing something. You're making your own movie. I think I told one of my kids that's how your life is. Your life is like it's always on play. You know, always. You know, you can't rewind. Yeah. You can't rewind. You can't fast forward. You know, your life is always in play. You can't put stuff. You can't pause. You know what I mean? It's always like playing. And so, you know, what are you, you know, playing in your life? You know, what really going on in your life? And so, and I think it's good for you to know, you know, like, what are you doing, you know? How are you living your life? Are you living a G-rated life? Or are you living a PG-13, you know? Yeah, oh yeah. Restricted, you know, but you know, like I said, there's a reason for all that. So, but I think hopefully we covered,
I think so.
I think everything.
Yeah. So that'll be our guidelines as we continue diving into different parts of conduct.
I think we talked about respect. Was it
One of the past episodes,
one of
yeah.
the ones recently that we talked about?
Yeah.
So, okay. I was just thinking about that. I know it's totally off.
Random
It's But I wanted to throw it in because I feel like, you know, when we think about respect, we think about like how we treat one another. But I think we also have to take into consideration, because I know one of the things I want to teach my kids is you have to respect people's time. You have to respect people's things. You have to respect people's like space, you know, and other things like that. I feel like those things are important, and I just wanted to throw it in. I know it's kind of off, the subject. a
No, I
little
mean
bit.
that goes into conduct because if you lose that, then that's gonna affect your conduct and your own like personal ratings. You know, your ratings of your conduct if you don't have that respect. So I guess it's just another thing to kind of like kick around if you're like PG-13 all the time. Like think, is it because I actually don't like care about these other people?
Yeah.
You know, so just
Or even the influence of other people's stuff too, you know.
Yeah. So I
affect
feel like
you.
that's something we don't teach kids. Because I think I heard the other day, I can't remember what I was listening to, but they were saying, you know, if you want your kids to be responsible like adults, you have to teach them responsibility. You can't just talk to them about it. You have to teach them. And so you have to make them responsible for things. If you want them to respect other people, then you have to teach them to respect other people. Or, you know, like one of my pet peeves was when kids would come to my house, other people's kids, and they'd run into every room in my house because somebody didn't teach them, you know, this isn't your house. You can't just go into people's bedrooms, because they would run into my bedroom, into my kids' bedroom. Like they would literally come into the house and start running into all the rooms in the house. I go, yeah, but that's because you didn't teach them. You know, somebody didn't teach them, hey, that's not your house. You don't just have the liberty to just go into their bedroom, you know, because to me that's a boundary.
Disrespectful,
Yeah. And you're not respecting the boundary there.
and that was bad conduct on the kids' part, but it wasn't the kids' fault.
Yeah. It was the parents didn't teach the kids. And yeah. So that's important, I think, even moving forward. Maybe you don't have that parental guidance. You don't have that parental, you know, to be there to give you. And hopefully this will help you a little bit to kind of see, maybe I should ask an adult. If you don't have a parent, maybe you could ask an adult, a responsible adult.
Not just any adult.
A PG or GO.
You think this is, you know, because they're the ones that have hopefully the wisdom to kind of be able to speak into your life. Because I know we didn't all have good parents. So we didn't all have that guidance, and maybe you've just been able to just do whatever, you know, but hopefully that helps a little bit as we move forward.
See.
So
We'll get into it next time.
yes,
Yeah.
we'll see you guys
Bye.
during Christmas.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.